Hello and welcome. The MBTA is in the news and on our minds, as it often is. I am here today with Leonard Diggins, Arlington resident and a member of the MBTA Rider Oversight Committee. Len, thanks for coming in.
I'm happy to be here. Never a dull day, week, or month at the MBTA.
Len is also the co-chair of the Capital Investment and Finance Subcommittee of the Rider Oversight Committee, and we'll be talking specifically about the anticipated fare hikes to come, what the structure and policy are behind that, and how people can weigh in, et cetera. And we may get on to other topics because there are, as you say, any number of things always to talk about when it comes to the MBTA. So how did the Rider Oversight Committee come about? Was it in reaction to a particular series of events, or was it just time for such a thing to be formed? Do you know what the background to that is?
So the background came out of the fare increases, in 2004. Actually, the creation of the committee, was in 2003 when, the T raised fares in that year, fourth fiscal year. In 2004, which would have been fiscal year 2005, and so there were advocacy groups, that worked with the T in order to create, the Rider Oversight Committee. So at the time, it was composed of public members, and advocacy groups, and MBTA members, and since then, it's morphed into just being a public member organization.
Let's start talking about the fare increases that MBTA users can expect to be seeing over the coming years. So can you just give us a brief outline of what we can be looking forward to in terms of fare increases? We know they're going to happen. What form are they likely to take?
The hope is that it will take a 5% increase over the last fare increase, which was in 2014. I get a little hung up sometimes because I tend to think in fiscal years, which are, of course, a half a year ahead. And that 5% increase really came out of the 2013 transportation legislation, which everyone was operating under the assumption meant that the fares would increase 5% every 2 years. Before then, we would have irregular, very large fare increases, that would take place every 4 or 5 years, and be in the range of, anywhere from, 20 to 30%. And the reason for that is that, the T was never quite sure when it would be able to do the fare increase, so it was kind of catching up, to years in which fares didn't increase, and then anticipating that it'd be a while before it could do another set of fare increases. And felt that the public, understood the need for fare increases. If you could plan for it, it would be easier, to deal with. And also with lower fare increases, the hope was that, the impact on the people using the T would be less. By that, I mean that there's this thing in economics called elasticity. So when prices go up, usually demand goes down. It's pretty much linear. But when you get to really low levels, it isn't necessarily linear. So you can imagine that if you were paying $1, for a loaf of bread and someone raised the bread prices by a penny, it wouldn't affect you. But if someone raised it by a quarter, it would. So we wanted to keep them really low so that people, wouldn't really feel it and it wouldn't affect the number of people using the T.
So let me ask you, that involved a 5% raise every 2 years,
roughly
or
rate of inflation,
or increase every 2 years. Is that into perpetuity, or was there a term over which you were considering that 5% every 2 years, or is that just meant to be how it goes from now on, ideally?
Well, there was no time limit on it, no time constraint on it, but the objective, at least from the respect of people like us who follow transit, and I want to make it clear that I'm not speaking for the Rider Oversight Committee right now, but I'm speaking from the point of view of someone who has a lot of knowledge from being a part of that committee, is that there's this thing called the fare recovery ratio, which is the amount of money you get from fares, divided by how much it costs to operate the T. So it's its operating budget, not its capital budget. And the T's fare recovery ratio right now is in the middle of when you compare it to transit systems of our size, about 42%. New York is on the high end, around 49%. I forget who's on the low end, around 39%. And the
So
feeling.
let's
Yeah,
just
sure.
clarify those figures. So
Sure.
when you say 42%, what you're saying is that the T is taking in fares about 42% of what it costs to operate the
Right.
system.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And the high end of something like that is an example in New York City where it's close to 50%.
Close to 50%.
Okay.
Yeah. And we feel that 50% would be a nice cap because, I mean, the expectation is that the public isn't going to, I mean, the riding public isn't going to pay the entire cost because the rest of the public that doesn't use the system also benefits from it. So it makes sense to us, to ask the state, to contribute, more, that other 50%, to their operating budget because other citizens, benefit from the fact that there aren't cars on the road, that many more cars on the road. We are contributing, to decreasing the effects of greenhouse gases by using the T. So 50% seems like it's a good point where you can say to folks, okay, the riders are contributing, their fair share. And so if we were to say, where do we stop, that 5% increase and maybe start just doing a steady state increase, or lower increases to just kind of match the increase in costs, that would be it.
Now, in a recent conversation with our state representative, Sean Garbely, he mentioned that in fact it looks like there's some kind of what he referred to as a loophole through which it is possible that we may be subject to a 10% increase in fares over the next 2 years or within the next 2 years. Can you explain what's going on there?
I don't know what's happened. I honestly don't know where even if the legislation allows me for this 10% increase, why it is that there is this willingness to violate the trust in the public. I mean, I can understand the motivation. I mean, the T needs more money. I can understand that, but why it is that they want to try to convince us that our understanding of it was wrong befuddles me, and it just seems so unnecessary because if the people in charge, the Secretary of Transportation, the governor, whomever, the head of the Fiscal Management Control Board would just say to the public, you know what, we need more money, and we think now might be the time to come to the public and say we need more money. We need to go maybe beyond that 5% every 2 years. I mean, we could have that discussion. I mean, and you could even make an argument that we could handle the larger fare increases in the short term and do smaller fare increases later on. So maybe even 10% in this coming fare increase period, 2016 and fiscal year 17, and maybe then 3%.
Diminishing amounts.
Yeah, diminishing amounts. I mean, but you can't get the public to buy into something long term like that if you feel that in the later years people are going to go, but you know what? I mean, we don't think we really meant 3%. We actually meant 5%. In which case you kind of feel, well, I gave you more up front on understanding that it'd be less later on. I mean, and if you're going to tell me, my understanding of that is wrong, as opposed to coming to me and saying, well, we need to adjust things. It's hard to get the public to buy in.
Right.
Because
so it's a potential hit in people's pockets, and it's also really a kind of violation, as you said, of that trust that exists between the public and our local, government and agency representatives who are meant to be making decisions for our collective benefit.
Right.
So where do things stand in terms of, do we just have to, is this a done deal? Are we stuck? Or does the public have a chance still to weigh in on this and on the fare increases generally?
Well, we're not stuck. There are going to be two chances. But first off, the fare increase rates, have not been determined. And that determination is going to happen in early January, and that's going to go out, for public feedback. And if I'm sure, APN will make it known to people when that is going out. You can go to the Rider Oversight Committee's website, mbtaroc.com and get that information, as well as stay abreast of what's going on MBTA's website, and you'll be able to make feedback. But also, there is a draft fare policy that is going to be going out for review, if not in January, then in February, and that sets out the whole fare policy, not so much the rates, but what it is, that the T, wants to accomplish through its fare policy, and we have gotten to see the draft of that, and been able to give some feedback, and we've encouraged the T, to put into its policy, that it will do these regular small fare increases and put a cap in it on its own, so that regardless of what the legislation says, it'll be able to do that. There's a little bit of an issue there, because if the legislation says the T has to do it, then you can't put in your policy something that goes against what's been determined by the legislature.
Okay, so just to recap, coming up in January, there will be issued from the MBTA both a proposed fare increase and the fare policy,
Right.
Both of which will be subject to, or at least give the public the opportunity to respond.
Right. There'll be meetings,
And that will last for, that period will last for the public response or feedback period will last for a month, or?
Yeah, usually they last in the range of 2 to 4 weeks. I mean, I say more like 3 to 5 weeks, but I'd say you'd have a month. And you can respond by email. And all I can say is I know it seems like an exercise in futility, to write to your legislature or the officials at MBTA, but I know that they listen, and I know the numbers matter, and because I've been involved with the Rock for a long time, and people have made it clear to me that it would help to hear more than just your voices on this. And when you get the public feeding back, I mean, they pay attention. They did, when it came to, changing the schedule for the commuter rail, on the north side. I mean, there were people from Wakefield who really, made it clear that, that was very disruptive to them, and they held off. It doesn't mean that, there won't be some changes, but it just proves that they do listen.
So a second thing, though, that is much on people's minds as we are enjoying these first balmy weeks of approaching winter, we know we're going to get hit with something over the next number of months. One hopes and assumes it won't be like last year's craziness. But what has happened? What have you observed through the Rider Oversight Committee? What plans are being made, or what progress has already been made in terms of assuring that the T will be in better shape to continue its operations regardless of the weather conditions?
$83 million for me was devoted, to the winter resiliency plan, and I mean, our understanding is that new equipment for removing snow from tracks, as well as the stations, have been bought, and there have been plans to adjust the schedules for better dealing with the trips that come into the city, especially on commuter rail, and when there are heavy snowfalls. I feel reasonably certain that they'll handle it better. And the only reason I shake my head with some uncertainty is just that if we get 7 feet of snow in 3 weeks, I mean, even though it may behave function better, I mean, you should still be prepared, for delays, and maybe even outages, because that amount of snow on the ground at one time, I mean, there's just not much you can do about it.
It was, I mean, obviously the winter of 2014-15 was an extraordinary event. And, one hopes that people will understand that you plan best you can, but dealing with extraordinary events is always going to involve inconvenience,
right.
At the very least.
Right, and even though that $83 million is devoted to winter resiliency, I mean, there is still, a shortfall, in the budget to keep this T, in a state of good repair. So now you may have all this winter equipment that will deal with snow, but if your wiring is going bad, and creating fires in tunnels, and other issues, or affecting the quality of the equipment, well, that's still going to break down, and winter, spring, summer, fall, and so it may very well happen that you'll have a breakdown in the wintertime, but that won't be because they didn't try to make it better to deal with snow. It's just that, the equipment continues to deteriorate.
Right. And in fact, 83 million, which, as you said, is going to be devoted to winterization, effective winterization going forward. That's a drop in the bucket compared to what is required, what is needed, I think, to deal with the general infrastructure weaknesses and vulnerabilities in the system.
Right.
Isn't that your understanding?
That's absolutely right. And in actuality, that 83 million came from monies that were set aside, to study, how to make the system more resilient to flooding. Because when Sandy hit New York, it became apparent, that we were really vulnerable to some flooding ourselves. Especially in the aquarium area, because if Sandy had come up, the track had been different. The water could have come into Boston Harbor and would have flooded, the system from the aquarium T-stop. So they were looking in ways to make that more robust. So for various reasons, that money was reallocated from that plan or that program, to winterization. Hopefully it'll come back, because it's one thing to take care of these freak snowfalls, which hopefully will be freak snowfalls, but I think it's kind of certain, that we have, a warming, climate, and rising water
right.
levels.
And so dramatic weather events that are going to affect the T if we are not trying to adequately prepare ourselves for them, that's fairly predictable.
Right.
We don't know precisely which
Right.
years they will come, but we know that there's going to be an increase in these severe and dramatic weather events. All right, well, we want to thank you very
Sure.
much. We appreciate the fact that we have access to somebody who's on the Rider Oversight Committee, because the MBTA will always be a matter of direct import and impact to Arlingtonians. And we'll be lucky and anticipate that we'll be counting on your expertise in the future as well.
Yeah, always happy to come and talk with you all.
Thanks for coming in today.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it very much.
Welcome.
For Leonard Diggins and for Arlington Public News and Arlington Community Media, I'm James Milan. Thanks for joining us. Join us next time.